Well, hello again, whiskey friends. Geez, helps if I'm prepared to go live, but I was prepared the first time. So this is take 2 on this whole thing. This time the counter says 1 person, so I know that it worked. Thank you for joining the backup link, everybody. We're going to get Nancy in here in just a moment, but I'm going to re-kick off the show. But we do have Nancy here tonight. She has been someone that we've been trying to get on the show for a little bit. Kelsey's been pursuing her to get on the show, and the stars aligned, and we just happened to get her on tonight. But of course, tonight was the night the StreamYard and YouTube kind of failed us. But hey, here we are. We're going to have fun. Be sure to pour yourself a Nancy pour of some sort. I have a whole flight planned for myself tonight to enjoy while we're conversing, and we're going to kick off the show. Thanks for joining, everybody. All right. Well, 27 people have made their way into the new room. Thanks for joining, whiskey friends. Let's bring on the rest of the panel. First, we got Kelsey.
Hey, everybody. I'm still trying to get the link over to Nancy, so bear with me here. If I'm not involved here, I'm trying to send it to her.
Yep.
So I'm having technical difficulties on my phone as well. So,
do you know how to grab it, Kelsey?
Yeah, I don't know why my phone is not wanting to send it. So
seems to be the night. Well, let's bring on Darrell. We can chat while we get Nancy back into this new room.
Hey guys, thanks again. We all kind of went through this, but we're doing it again. We were saying hello to who we thought was all of you, but somehow it wasn't working.
Well, while we're waiting for Nancy, let's see who was first in this room, since it was the whiskeychannel.com and it was Top Dog in the other room. So I'll go through some hellos while Kelsey figures out the link. All right. Katie confirming that we did successfully make it and we are successfully live. And then we got Bill. Cheers. Yeah, first link just went bad. Like I was going live and then the counter was saying 0. And I was like, I think something's wrong. We just kept saying, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you hear us? And then no one was interacting with us. So that was clear that we had to redo it.
Got it. So she'll be
here again. And we got MJ. Cheers. Hopefully see EJ later too. All right. Slap shot. Thanks for coming, buddy. And OH. Woo. And then we got Wise Guy Stu. Hello, buddy. And then we got Doug H. And now I see Nancy has joined us in the background. So we'll put a pause on saying hi to people. And let's bring out our guest of honor. Just a few minutes late. Yeah! Everyone give a big welcome to Nancy.
Woo! And that took a moment or two.
Sorry. Oh, goodness.
You got it going. Carrie, you got to get down, baby. Get down.
All right.
Nancy, thank you for joining us in room number 2.
Yeah, now that everything is, everybody's here. And
exactly.
Ooh, yeah, good to
just
be on.
Adding to the commotion of the day, I think, for a couple of us.
Crazy.
For real.
Well, we got 52 people in here so far. Everyone, let us know what you're starting out with drinking. And, Nancy, I'll actually open it up to you real quick. But tell us what you're drinking and how you're going to kick off the evening.
Yeah, so I am kind of doing something unexpected tonight. I don't know if anyone has ever heard of Irish Channel from 7-3 Distillery out of New Orleans. This is a 13-year-old light whiskey blended with Irish whiskey that I did. I first put it together back in 2016, 17. It's had the years kind of escape me anymore. Exactly, but at this distillery, I'm now they're not one of my 4 main distilleries I work with, but I've started working with them again, and I'm doing some experiments about to start with swamp maturation. So anyway, that's the for tonight.
All right. Now, what's swamp maturation? I haven't heard that term.
Well, that's probably because it doesn't exist yet. So it is having warehouses. So I already have the warehouses in place that are literally right on the edge of the swamp in Louisiana. Kind of near the Mississippi border and such.
Sure.
And so we're going to experiment to kind of see what bourbon tastes like when it's matured in very, obviously hot, humid conditions. But you get that intense humidity by the swamp, and kind of see what that turns into. So,
Okay.
but yeah, that's one of my current projects at the moment to see how that kind of thing is going to turn out.
All right.
Very cool.
Kelsey, what are you going to kick off with?
I poured myself some of the Still Austin Straight Rye Whiskey, the artist, from last year. So kicking off with a rye.
Perfect.
Sipping on that.
All right.
I got all bourbons on my end. I'm going to start off with a by baby J. Henry, the Armagnac.
Yeah, La Flamme. That's
that one's for you.
yeah.
Look at that.
I was going to say, I think I recognize that. It's a quick FYI. My identical twin sister is in the chat.
Oh, is she?
Under E Fraley 37. So if you see that person, that is my sister.
Okay.
Hanging out with us tonight.
That's cool.
Well, I'll highlight some more names here in just a moment. I'm going to pour myself a sample that I have been holding on to for months, just in case you happen to come on, Nancy. That was my whole motivation. But I got the Joseph Magnus cigar blend, batch 93. Now I have had this once before. You brought a bottle of this to Pours in the Park last year and let everybody sample it there.
Right.
So
right.
That was a lovely pour then, and now I get to re-explore it now for the first time in almost a year. So I am quite excited.
Fantastic.
Thank you for this.
All right. Yeah, I can't wait to hear what you think about that. That's yeah, I liked those batches. They sometime after I know a lot of people have asked about this, and it should be on the label of Joseph Magnus here. Back in around batch 15, I started using some Bartons, and in addition to the 36% MGP bourbon, and the recipe was primarily Barton's, actually, through about batch 97. And now I've gone back to, I still have Barton's stock, but I've gone back to using a lot more of the MGP in the recipe again. So I know over the, on a lot of social media, I've seen people say, well, when did they start using Barton's? Saying, God, it was so early on. But it is on the label. It does have both Kentucky and Indiana. But anyway, just an FYI for folks. But yeah, we're now back to the majority of the blend is. Let's see a question here. I'm going to interrupt myself. Nancy, the batch notes for JMCB stopped at batch 111 on the website. So, I think it's been, I've put it out there over the past year. I've kind of had some health issues I've been dealing with and such. And so I got possibly behind on those tasting notes. And I hope, to at least kind of pick things up with the new batches again. I don't know if, it takes me probably for every 6 batches, it takes me about 8 to 10 hours to do the tasting notes.
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know, if I'm ever going to have the time to go back to those earlier batches. I would love to. I just, I've only got so much time, and
Yeah.
but I hopefully we'll kind of get back on track with that again. All right, yeah. There's Elizabeth.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers,
I found
Elizabeth.
her.
Cheers.
And then I found it was Bill that asked that question. So I'm caught up here, everybody. Sorry if I didn't say hi and highlight your name, but thank you all for being here. We got 78 people in here in chat, but I'll just jump down to chat from here. Now, Nancy, I got a question. If you don't do the tasting notes, does the batch have an official name?
They haven't since I quit doing the I stopped around 111. So the only way that I know the name is if I really kind of work through the tasting. It just kind of tells me what it is, if that makes sense. So I never really have a set name that I'm going to name it. And sometimes every 6 batches of cigar blend come from what I call the same coupe mare, which is the same mother blend. And all of that then goes into 6 different Armagnac casks, which then becomes a batch of, maybe 300 or 400 bottles per barrel.
Okay.
Sometimes all 6 will kind of, there will be kind of some kind of theme that I'm thinking, the taste is reminding me of something, or sometimes it's very random. The batches might be from the same coupe, but the way that they developed in the Armagnac cask is really different. So the way I've traditionally done those notes is all just get up early in the morning on a Sunday. Sit there and I'm literally nose and take notes and to try and get that done all day. But I mean it takes a lot of time to get that stuff. It's not like 5 minutes and scratch it out. So anyway, I know that's a long-winded way to get around to the answer of that.
Oh no,
Awesome.
We understand. I torture these guys with essentially a survey I have behind the scenes where I make them fill out like 100 questions on something before we review it. And it's like fill out all these notes, fill out all these scores, and then really walk through the process. So
Yeah.
Which is
really
helps
with Glenn, for an hour.
It's really it really helps you kind of digest and pick apart and think about what you're sipping.
You gotta go downstairs.
Guess one of the first questions that I have is a little bit more music related. They're quick. First concert, best concert.
Downstairs, Kara.
Yep. Okay.
And first guitar and best guitar.
Gotcha. First concert was 1982. It was Alabama, the country band, and man, I mean that's it was an outdoor concert. You arrived early in the day, and everybody was sitting on the ground and all. Probably to this day is still like the wildest experience of any concert I've ever had. They don't do. People don't do things like that anymore, that I'm aware of. So anyway, it was wild. Best concert was probably last year. I got almost front row tickets, it was like row 3 or 4 to see Paul McCartnney.
Wow.
I mean, I saved up for that one. It was like a dream for me to. I'd seen him before, but like up close, man, that was just like blew my mind. And he was even at 80 years old, he was just so on top of it.
Oh yeah.
First guitar was actually, believe it or not, a banjo. I probably would have gotten that thing. I think I was like 9 or 10 years old, so it would have been like 1979, I think. And I soon thereafter I traded it in for a guitar, but just kind of a crappy acoustic guitar, and I had to move on to a crappy electric at that point too.
Yeah.
Best guitar. So I would have to say I've got 3 that would fit that category. I've got 3 pre-CBS era, when Leo actually ran the company. So pre 1965.
Wow.
I've got one 1958 P bass, a 1962 P bass, and a 1964 Mustang guitar.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like right, but before Leo, sold the company in January 1st of 65. So those are my prized possessions. But I probably have. I was at my height, I probably had about 25 guitars or so. I've kind of heard a little bit, but so
Very cool.
But that's.
I'm always curious. Like I know you have quite a few, and I know you like to play a lot. So that was kind of the first thing that popped in my head. That you were talking about your tasting notes.
Yeah.
Are there? I know you taste and pick apart things all the time, but is there any regular pour that you go to when you're just drinking to enjoy without constantly trying to pick apart and analyze, that you just sit down with and you enjoy? Is there
when
one
Nancy's
particular
not
one
on
that
the
you
clock?
Like? Yeah, exactly.
Nancy's not on the clock.
Well, probably these days I'm actually working hard trying not to drink because I'm working with it all day. But no, that said, probably because I've got so many cask samples at my disposal and all. I'll have a lot of cask strength cask samples that are not haven't been filtered down or anything like that.
Right.
Straight from the barrel. But I will say though, if I'm just hanging out and not I have something bottled, it probably is going to be something like J. Henry Laflamme, which is I think arguably one of my very favorite spirits. Also, I don't have a bottle of it, but I've got this 10-year Wyoming whiskey here. But Outrider is kind of the hour Burai is one of my regulars, and I have to say, just like Still Austin cask strength, because I also like the Nancy's
you
picks.
Find them everywhere because of Navia.
Such, but yeah, that's I like I like high proof a lot. I have to say, they've got a name for that. And forgive me.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Darrell would be right there with you.
All right, Darrell.
I'll tell you in the beginning, I definitely wasn't. 100 proof was hot as heck to me, and you grab the stuff hotter and hotter, and to the point where 100 goes down like water, and you're like, wait, am I even drinking?
It's scary, yeah.
Higher proof stuff now.
Jeff, did you have one question for her? Or question?
Got a question coming in. I think it's a follow-up then on what you said earlier. But so Steve's got a Joseph Magnus batch 22. It mentions Indiana on the side and not Kentucky. So he's just kind of wondering.
I can answer that. And this kind of thing is a little confusing to people. Why they don't really understand when I tell them no. I swear I started at batch 15. Is that TTB gives distilleries a little bit of a grace period. So labels aren't cheap, and when you buy them in the thousands. And so they allow you a little time to kind of use up that stock before you put what's absolutely legally required on there too. But so it's not that we did anything illegal, because the TTB allows for that. But I think that consumers are often a little confused about that. But yeah, so batch 22 definitely would have had Barton's at that point. Yeah, I was kind of well on my way there. And around batch or the batches in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, when you see those really high proofs like 127 to 132 or so, a good deal of those are, that's a lot of Barton stock with maybe just a little bit of MGP and a little, or some of the 20-year-old MGP that had really fallen in proof. But yeah, that Barton stock really pushed it back up.
Yeah.
So
I'm looking at batch 52 and mine is 64.93% ABV. So
yep.
that one was up there.
And I got 33 here. That's 63%. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's well into the Bartons at that point.
All right.
In fact, I had even contemplated. Well, I've never cigar blend has never been reduced ever with water. I mean, it's always at cask strength. But I'd actually gotten some pushback when those high proofers started coming out, and people saying, "Oh, it's too high, too high." I think, well, you're paying for the pure alcohol. You can reduce it. Don't have me reduce it. You're the one paying for it. So that ought to be up to you to decide. So I kind of toyed with the idea of reducing it, but I thought, nah, I'll just let the consumer, the connoisseur, make that decision for themselves. That's what I would want done if it were me.
Yeah.
So.
It does feel like the expectations are different, even based on just like 5 years ago. When it comes to the cask strength, more and more, that's just almost the expectation, especially depending if it's a premium price as well.
Well,
right.
And I know people, I've heard what secondary prices of it are. I mean, which are just insane. I mean, I intended to create a premium product, but not something that was so out of reach for people, if that makes sense. I mean, I see that, but the way I kind of think about it, okay, if you're going to give your hard-earned money for it, then it damn well better be, And
we appreciate that.
Yeah, we appreciate that
very much. So
that's
exactly our mindset for sure.
If you want to, water it down, that's your choice. But I want people to get what they pay for at least on it.
Yeah.
Well, my next question for you, Nancy, I'm going to cue it up here because Mr. Great Shot might be like heading you off a little bit here, but I was going to ask you about exciting upcoming projects, and then I find this little message here.
Yes, that is
Mr.
right.
Shot just picked up the Red Corn Bottle and Bond, and he thinks it's awesome. And he's got a lot of people in chat that were cheersing him and agreeing with him already.
Well, I still have yet to try the actual finished version of it. So I'll be getting my bottles hopefully in the next few days. But I mean, it was a pleasure to blend, and I'll tell you something else. I am so personally pleased to finally see a bottled and bond product, and for the ages to just keep on creeping up, and beginning on July 1st, all of the Still Austin Nancy Select bottles are going to be a minimum of 5 years, and then next year, will be a minimum of 6 years, and on
That's
like
cool.
that.
Right.
We'll see how far we can get with it in that Texas heat.
Yeah.
7 years could be too much. Or 8. I don't know, but I want to see how far we can get with it. But I love that Jimmy Red Corn. And so will it have another, we're doing 4 seasonal bottled and bond releases. So next month I'll get started on the fall release too. And another thing I might have mentioned, or I don't know if I did, so if I'm repeating myself, but with the Still Austin the Artist, we are going to soon have the cask strength version come out. So I've already blended that up. I blended that on it was like late March.
Okay.
So that's probably being dumped and bottled even as we speak, or getting ready. I don't know if I don't remember if they're just waiting on the labels, or there's always some kind of hold up like that. The distilling world. I've got that going. Just tons of projects for this year. I have to say, with everybody I work with. I don't know if you guys. How many? Yeah, okay, yeah. Let me get to this question. Nancy, do you know, or can you say how many mash bills still Austin distills? Boy, right now, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know, maybe like 8 to 10.
Oh, wow.
Probably.
All right.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and we've got some things that like the first thing that we ever laid down was actually a wheated bourbon. And I knew that, it takes a long time for wheat to really come on board, but I think that's almost 6 years old now. So, and it hasn't been released as a product yet. So, yeah, but anyway, yeah, we've got a lot of fun things coming down the line with the still Austin, and
Man.
be working on hopefully a very, very high end blend later this year too for them. So we'll that probably wouldn't be a release until 24, 25. So
Okay.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you had something else in mind right before that question there. Was there something you were
yeah,
going to show
yeah,
us?
that's so I don't know if there are any Wyoming whiskey fans, but if anybody had a chance to try the Wyoming whiskey 10-year-old anniversary release that came from it was actually a rye bourbon that was the original, one of the original components in Outrider.
Okay.
Man.
So this came out on December 1st of last year. But along that line, I was going to say, I just got back from working 2 weeks in the beginning of blending season at Wyoming Whiskey, and starting to go through some stock from 2013 that I think is potentially going to turn out to be a 12-year release.
Oh,
From still
nice.
From
No, from
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
From Wyoming.
Yeah, and so we're that wouldn't be coming online until 2025. But I'm trying to look ahead, like well ahead of things, and I've got about 8 to 10 barrels identified right now for that, and if I can find any more that I like for that program, those are currently high up in the ricks around row F. And so this summer I'm getting ready to have them put those barrels down on row A. So where it's a little cooler and not as hot and such, and kind of I don't want all that to evaporate over the next 2 years. So we're just kind of trying to slow things down a little bit with that. So that ought to be fun. And I don't know if I've ever, if you guys ever seen the Joseph Magnus Family Reserve.
No.
No, I've
never
never seen that
seen
label
that.
before.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Okay. So it came out in
Here,
2016.
I'll zoom in here so everyone can see it.
It was a blend of two barrels, a 16 and an 18-year-old. And
Oh, wow.
I'm not saying it's worth $1,000, but it retailed for $1,000. I don't see
Got you.
price.
Wow.
That is so
Wow.
not my wheelhouse. But for the past 4 years, I've been working on a like the second edition of Family Reserve, and the components in there are it's more barrels, like 5 or 6 barrels. Might even have 7 in there now, but it's 17 to 22 years old. So I don't know if
Wow.
that will be dropping later this year or the beginning, Q1 of 25. I mean, excuse me, 24. So that's something else going on. I was just working with Joe Jr. At J.
J.
Henry,
Henry. Yep.
and we just it usually takes us about a year, at least a year, to put the to put LE together, and as the ages go up, and that it's just really delightful. So we're trying to kind of get that ready.
Is
for the
he
November
still
release.
working on the rye that he's going to release, Nancy?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I heard some wonderful things about that rye as
Oh my
well.
God.
So.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Yeah, about that rye. I mean, that's just yeah, just an amazing pour. So, or it will be, when it's released. But
Yep.
what's straight from the cask is just amazing. It's absolutely divine. And then I just saw a question from oh, let's see. What is your favorite distillery? And why is it Dickel?
Oh,
That's
Aaron.
directed to Kelsey, I assume.
Yeah, he knows
I
it's
think
not
that's directed
Dickel.
to Kelsey. I think that's directed
Yeah,
to Kelsey.
yeah. Oh, goodness gracious.
Thank-
That's one of my best friends.
Thank
He's
you,
got to give
Aaron.
me a hard time. I do have a question for all the whiskey nerds that you probably answered more than one time, and I apologize for those that have already heard this question, but I think it's important to hear. In the blending process, could you describe a little bit more about the pyramid model and how it helps you when you're blending, and kind of how you came upon that model for what you do?
Yeah, sure. And it must have been, I gather, somebody that took a course with me at Iron Root Republic got that information out there. It's but anyway, it doesn't really matter if you're blending coffee, tea, whiskey, wine, whatever. You can think about blending kind of in sometimes it makes sense to to think about it as like a musical piece, or architecture or something. But I just kind of use this thing of what I call the pyramid theory. I've studied blending all over the world now. Studied with master blenders in the Caribbean, to all over France and such. But what I find is that if you're doing, say, like a small batch type of whiskey, like Wyoming whiskey small batch, or the artist from Still Austin, the rye whiskey, or the musician, or something like that, where when you're blending barrels for that the kind of product, you can kind of think about it in terms of pyramid, obviously, but the bottom of the pyramid is what I usually refer to as like your A profile barrels, and those will tend to be often very kind of unidimensional, but just think caramel, vanilla. So like a Wyoming whiskey, if I'm doing a 40 barrel blend of small batch, that might be 23 to 25 barrels of that profile I'd look for. So now you're trying to kind of fill in the blanks. It's trying to create more complex notes, and so then I would be looking for barrels that are more what I call like a B profile, that might have a little bit more dark dried fruit, a little bit more spice, just a little bit more intensity to them. And those barrels will probably come somewhere. Whereas the A profile is more like lower tiers in the warehouse. The B profile will be more like your middle cut in the warehouse. And finally, the top of the pyramid are what I refer to as the C profile barrels, and those are barrels that are like so spicy, or just like have some kind of really intense aromatic to them. Maybe they've got a lot of barrel char, smoky notes to them, and in and of themselves, if you put a whole blend together of that, it would just be way too overwhelming. So maybe like in a 40 barrel blend, maybe 1 to 5 of those barrels and and that kind of like wraps up the entire thing, and that way, that's how you build dimension in a whiskey, it's not always the same. I don't have like a set formula of always
Right.
this many barrels and that of this or that. That's kind of where the art of the blend comes in. But yeah, that's a good way to if you kind of follow that for those kind of products, you can create consistency over time and such. And if you don't. Well, yeah, let me backtrack a few frames here. When I first started at Wyoming Whiskey, of course, Steve Nally, who had been the former master distiller at Maker's Mark, had been the master blender at Wyoming, and he left in I think spring of 2014, and I came on in fall of 14. But anyway, at Makers, they had this practice, which very few distilleries do anymore, of you put your barrels, after you put your new make, you put them on the highest rows, and every year you transfer the barrels down a rack. And that way you create consistency over time. Well, when I got to Wyoming Whiskey, I cut that practice out, because while you get uniformity and spirits, which a place like Maker's Mark, that's really important. But you lose, you don't, you can't, if you have, a honey hull, some honey barrels, you're going to, kind of lose all that. Or if there's a certain profile you want to, make that's not the standard profile, you lose all that the freedom to do that with those barrels. Like I don't know if you guys have had Wyoming Whiskey double cask. So that's a very different. I mean, it's the same mash bill, same yeast, same cooperage, all that, but where I harvest those barrels out of the warehouse is very different than what I do for small batch. So it turns out to be a completely different product. So yeah, I mean, it's not just I'm just using Wyoming Whiskey as an example, but yeah, if you kind of think of the use your warehouse in a smart way, you can come up with vastly different products just based on how things mature in there and such, and using the same mash bill yeast, same recipe, vastly different products. So anyway, forgive me from that long-winded
No, you're fine. You're fine.
The concept of blending is something that excites all three of us. Jason at the Mash and Drum has been the one to kind of ignite us a bit with all these blend again competitions, and then we find ourselves working on a blend like all year long now, and we'll like pass our blends along to each of us. I don't know if that's actually collusion, but we kind of do that, and we test each other out, and then we taste Durrell's, and Durrell's is really good, so then I gotta make mine even better, and then we just kind of try to amp things up there. All of us have made it pretty far, so we're always interested in picking up those tips and tricks as we
absolutely
try to take that crown at Blend Together. But not just Blend Together, though. I have a question for you, and we've debated this a bit on the channel already. But what we're seeing more and more is some companies offering the blending experience to the public to come in and do it, and then they can then go and buy barrels of that. And now we're starting to see groups even take that approach, rather than doing a single barrel, doing some type of blend. Do you see that as being something that might actually take off in the next couple of years, or do you think single barrels will still be the way to go?
I'm actually very happy to see blending kind of get its due, because way too often people often have this attitude of, well, if it's blended, it always must be the inferior cask to get blended, and that's not always true. I'm
67, I think.
And I really appreciate that there's now a interest in the art of blending, and to see that 2 + 2 doesn't always equal 4. I mean, it could be -7. It could be 5. It just that and done this kind of experiment with people before too, where you get, say, 6 wonderful barrels that are essentially single barrels. And if you blend them together, that might be a terrible blend. Just because you've got good cast too doesn't necessarily, I mean, there's just so much that goes into it, which I know you guys have seen, through your own blends, that it's, you kind of theoretically think something should turn out a certain way, and then when it doesn't, I've got to scratch your head. Oh my God, what happened there? Why didn't it turn out that way? I mean, I know, once I've got this infinity blend that I've, been having for fun for years, and I love William LaRue Weller. And so I put a little bit of Weller in there, and I thought, it's just going to make this blend so much. Well, I ruined it. It's so like whatever was going on with the chemistry just so changed that to where I didn't throw it out, but it took me a long time to kind of get that back to normal. So you just never know. It's an art form. It's a moving target. So,
yeah, that what you said earlier. I just had that recent experience where I was at one of the places that lets you do your own blends, and I was doing it with my wife and a few other friends. And my wife made something that was really, really good. And I tried like 10 different combinations, and I could never beat what she did. But the reason that I couldn't beat it is because she was essentially using one of the casts that I set aside because I didn't like it on its own. She was using that as her accent, and that's what was actually completing the blend every time. Whereas I was like, oh, I'm just going to concentrate on these 3 because these are the 3 I like individually. But I just couldn't find any combination to get them to meld. And then when I finally saw her recipe, I was like, well, that's why I couldn't repeat this. You used the thing I wouldn't use.
Well, that's a good case in point. And the fewer components you use, like if you've got 3 barrels that you're trying to blend, I kind of think about it. Is that more like a jazz trio? Whereas like a 40 or 60 barrel blend is more like a symphony. If there's some wrong notes in there, you can kind of hide it a little better. But the small blends are just notoriously difficult to get right. And I mean, and it's but yeah, some kind of component like what your wife found, on its own, it just it's not that great. But a little bit of that in your blend, it makes the whole thing come together.
No,
it all come together.
And it's just cool to me to see that happen every time.
Well, got a question here from Stanley. So, since 45th Parallel distills J. Henry, have you worked on any of their new releases and tastings like Red Fife, Master Blender's book?
No, I've never. I mean, I know Paul Warney, the owner and original distiller at 45th Parallel, but I've never worked with them personally. Yeah. Yeah, just J. Henry and that.
I think that second question might have been its own thing there. So, would you write a Master Blender's book?
Well,
maybe that's what he's asking there with that little.
That's interesting that you mentioned that, because my mentor, who was a 10th generation cognac maker that came to California in the early 1980s, he actually wrote he wrote 2 books, one on distillation and the other on kind of like the art of being cellar master blender. I helped him with that book. I wrote the foreword to it, and I'd be happy to put that information out there. If you hang on a minute, I'll go grab it if you want to see the title.
All right.
I guess while she's doing that, I seen a question from David. It was to her. Actually, no, was that the one? Yeah. So speaking of, I've been drinking that bottle or that sample for the past like 15 minutes. David, that Bellefontaine is pretty legit. For me, in terms of like quick tasting notes, a lot of vanilla. You do get sweet oak, but it's almost like barn oak. if that makes any sense. Like, not, it doesn't come across like super old. It's like a fresh smell of oak with tons of like spicy berry jam for me. The palate on that is amazing. The nose is really great too. So I would say it's worth a pickup. I know Nancy, she'll definitely say it's worth a pickup as well. Talking about the Bellefontaine, he was asking about some tasting notes. Drinking it like literally for the past 5 minutes. So I just touched on it.
So I'm curious. What do you get on there?
So I was just mentioning him. So for me, like up front, it's a nice oak presence, but it's more of a newer oak, not like just say a seasoned oak that's been in the rick house for years upon years. It's just more. I don't know what that note is, but just a newer scent to it, just freshly milled, maybe in a sense. But on the palate, it's like spicy blackberry jam for me, and it's really, really good. You get a nice vanilla, lovely oak, well, sweeter oak, but that berry jam is what's doing it for me. It's like so good, right at the back, well, mid to back of the palate on that. It's fantastic. And it drinks well above 101. Like I had the Armagnac, which is 115 or 115.
Well, that's what I'm talking right now.
Yeah, the La Flamme, it almost drinks the same, and it's 15 proof points lower, which is kind of nuts. But that's definitely a good one. So
if I'm hearing you right, Darrell, you're getting a lot of like fruit kind of notes on that.
On the Bellefontaine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's a trick to make that happen, actually. So,
to bring out the fruitness, you're saying?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and to it's also do you find it that it also the oak notes are actually oak is actually seasoned, and everything in there is I mean, a minimum of 5 years old, if not like 5.5 to 7 or so. So it's not young oak in there, but it's an old cognac trick that I picked up. I started off as a brandy maker, so this old cognac trick is. I don't know if you've ever heard of Petit Eau. So it's, French for small waters. It's kind of like, how bourbon distilleries will actually put water, after they've dumped the bourbon, they'll put water in the barrels and kind of flush the whiskey out. Well, this is kind of like that, but what you're doing essentially is fortifying water and aging it. So and so what you do is you actually add like in the case of J. Henry's Petit Eau, or also sometimes known as Via Faible, Old Week. I'll get a minimum of 5-year-old bourbon that that's spent its life and as a bourbon cask. You get water, and you actually add the alcohol to the water as opposed to the water to the alcohol, and you go up to maybe about 25 to 27 or 30% alcohol in volume, and you age that. And by adding the, they call it strong to weak as opposed to weak to strong. So you're actually creating esterification. So those fruity notes that you get in a product like Bellefontaine actually come from that fortified water. Another thing that the fortified water does is, as you age it over time, you're pulling out a lot more water solubles out of the oak. So think all those caramelized wood sugars and such, and it's just a more sophisticated way to instead of just using a reverse osmosis water or whatever, to proof down, and it kind of helps create a creamier mouthfeel and more fruitiness. So it has a lot of benefits, but it's the only kind of, it takes money and space to age fortified water. So it's only, you just want to use it for your highest end products if you're going to do something like that. But yeah, that's if we also do that at J. Henry for La Flamme as well. We don't add that much because this is batch 2 was 56.75 ABV, and and just a little bit. We like for that product to be as close to cask strength as possible, but a little bit of that Petite O, and man, it just like completely transforms the palate. So, yeah, that's an old technique. I've at J. Henry, I would say that the oldest Petite O that they've got laying down there is legally 5 years old, but technically about 11 or 12 years old, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
So the age stops once it leaves the original bourbon cask, but the technical age, is much older than that.
Sure.
So anyway, that's a bit of behind. And when you make that Petite O as well, it drinks like an aperitif. When it's aged that long, it's beautiful. I mean, it's just a blending component, but I swear you could just drink it, like it's a before dinner whiskey kind of.
Yeah, I bet.
It's just lovely. So anyway, yeah, I hope that kind of answers that.
No, it definitely does.
It's a cool
I don't
technique.
know about that at all. That's interesting.
Well, there's a very serious question in chat here, Nancy.
Oh dear. Okay.
Top Shelf Dustin wants to know if you can just adopt everybody, apparently.
All right, let's go down to the courthouse now and get this done.
All right. She didn't say no, Dustin. She didn't say no.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then Big Vic wants to know if any plans for being in SoCal.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be in. I'm up in Northern California. That's where I live. I've been wanting to go down to Southern California before too long again, but yeah, I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but yeah, hopefully before too long. In this fall.
Knowing Vic, the reason that he asks is that he wants to bring you a giant tray of barbecue. That's usually why he asks a question like that.
I would be very on board for that. I love barbecue. Yeah, I'm a Southern girl, so of course I love it.
Just had them today.
Well, we're hitting the top of the hour. Typically, we usually call it at 9. I know we had a few minutes here that we were getting all round up. So if there are any final questions, Kelsey and Darrell, now would be the time to ask before we send everybody over to Jason at the Mast and Drum.
I have one more that I feel like that you haven't answered yet.
Yes.
What are the trends that you see generally, like overall, in the whiskey world that you feel like will be most influential going forward for whiskey?
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of a big question. I don't know exactly, but I
let me close it in a little bit more regarding like the barrel shortages that are going on. Is there, with American single malts coming on, more whiskeys, more distilleries doing that? Is there another trend, or do you see that American single malt being a trend that will continue, that will have influence over the whiskey world? Something along those lines that you're seeing right now.
I definitely do, and I'm glad to see more and more American single malt distilleries use bourbon casks instead of going directly for the the virgin oak. I'm thrilled to see that. Well, like Virginia Distillery Company, who I've worked with in the past too. They for their they use sherry cask and ex wine cask too. But I'm thrilled that more and more distilleries like that malt are using ex bourbon cask. it's, I with the problem is with so many bourbon distilleries opening up, and more and more, I don't know, what's going to happen to the supply of bourbon cask, and that's kind of concerning. But I also am seeing trends, and I'm doing some work like this myself with like American single malt that's blending with malt from other parts of the world. I've got an Israeli single malt whiskey distillery that I'm working with right now, and it's we've got another side project to blend some of that with some American malt and such. So I'm kind of seeing like dual maturation becoming a thing.
Interesting.
Too, where you've got it could be like cross continental or different parts of the states or whatever. So that's cool to see. But yeah, a lot of really cool things going on out there, and I'm sure I don't have my pulse on all of it. But certainly what I work with. Just a quickly want to answer John W. About the Wyoming whiskey single barrel. And asking if I help select with the barrels. Yeah, I do everything at Wyoming Whiskeys. So yeah, on any single barrels would have run by me first to go into that program and such. So anyway, that's
very cool.
Yeah, I hope I.
This question. Sorry.
Well, Nancy, I know you got up to show us something here, then we got way off topic all of a sudden. Do you have one last thing to show us what you got up out of your chair for a second ago?
Oh, yeah. So it's not the book on maturation, but this is the book by my mentor. I helped him with this. His first book on traditional distillation, Hubert Germain Robin. The second one on maturation and blending was the one I helped him with, even more so, and that I wrote the forward to. It's I don't know if I'll ever do a book on my own. I'd love to. It's kind of just a matter of getting time to do that kind of stuff. So
she's too busy blending whiskey.
Yeah, exactly.
Nancy, in my experience, in those times where we're spending like an hour long with the dram and we're thinking about the notes, maybe getting some writing in between, just a little bit by a little bit.
Yeah, hey,
might
that's
be a good inspiration.
But truth be told, when you've done 100+ barrels in a day, had a 6 to 8 hour day of that, sometimes the last thing you want to be doing is writing. I'm just usually ready to bed. At that point. It's just exhausting. But yeah,
I understand.
Maybe one of these days when I've got some time in my hands.
Maybe it will be the oldest ones.
Well, if you do write the book, you have a sale over here in me, and I'm sure amongst these other two.
Absolutely, 100%.
So there's at least 3, and I know there's 73 others still in chat. They're going to buy it as well, and thousands of others as we get it out there.
Yeah, it'd be fun to do that. One of these days, I'd actually kind of like to write a book combining all the wisdom, that I've gained from, like these master blenders I've studied with in France. That not only have they been doing it for like 40, 50, 60 years themselves, but their families have been doing it for like 300 or 400 years. And just all the people I've studied with. One of these days, I'd love to kind of compile all that knowledge, and because
absolutely
I won't find it anywhere else. It's that stuff is really tightly held. I might make it. I don't want to make enemies with with my colleagues.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for joining us tonight and going a little over with us to make up for some of the technical difficulties earlier. We really appreciate you coming on, talking with us. This was fascinating. You're probably going to inspire us to start blending our Blend-Ageddon mixes for 2023. Oh, and then we'll probably start asking you questions too. So
That's
what can we do here? What can we do there?
sooner you get on it and, let your components marry, the better. So, that's be happy to answer any questions on it though. So.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Well, everyone in chat, thank you for joining us. Now, Nancy, what we do is we go around and we sign off and we cheers everybody. So we'll start with you. Just let people know where to find you, where to be next, what to be excited for next, all those type of things as you say goodbye.
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. I think I don't know if I got through every project I'm working on right now, but I've got some really exciting stuff ahead, and look forward to sharing it with all of you, and good times ahead, and keep your chin up, and whiskey should to me always be a positive thing about making friends, and
absolutely
good times and such. So cheers to that.
All right, cheers. All right, Darrell, why don't you sign off?
Guys, thanks again. This was one for the works. We've been trying to do it for a while, so we're glad we finally made it happen. Glad all you guys were here. You continue to follow us through this every Wednesday, and just on YouTube in general. Find me at the Whiskey Saint on IG. And that's pretty much it. But just I want to thank everybody for just stopping in, man. Like, it means a lot to us.
Absolutely.
Cheers to that.
Chelsea.
Cheers. Thanks, Nancy. Thanks so much for tonight. It was such a blast. I told my wife when I was getting ready for work today, I was like, I get to actually see Nancy tonight and talk to her and geek out and have a whole sheet of questions that I wrote out. So thank you again. Thanks to everybody for following along and supporting us and making whiskey friends all the way around the world and enjoying whiskey. So cheers to that. Jeff, sign off for us.
Yeah.
And Nancy, you already hit upon it. That's the entire theme of the channel. Isn't us, it's the whiskey friends. It's the community. It's everybody out there, and just getting to enjoy the whiskey together and sharing it. That's the entire inspiration for the channel. So I appreciate you laying that down.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me on. I'd love to be on again. Like in 6 months. Right? No,
all right. We're writing it down. 6 months.
So, seriously, I would love to be on again. Well, it'd be a lot of fun.
We'd love to have you anytime.
Thank you. Well, cheers to Nancy. Cheers to everyone out there still hanging out. Cheers. 58 people.
Woo!
All right. I'm going to end it with a still Austin here. I've been waiting to pour this one.
Oh. Sweet.
But everyone that's still here, please go over to Jason over at the Mash and Drum. He is probably about to go through a blind flight of Heaven Hill. He's got that planned for the next 2 weeks. So he's got 11 different Heaven Hill samples poured, and he's going to go through a blind flight tonight. So let's hop over there, check him out, and we'll see you on the next Whiskey Wednesday.
All right.
Bye, everybody.
Cheers. Jeff, just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these whiskey friends, and you say hello again. Oh, Jeffrey, you should just be friends with me. But you have these